All right, all right, all right. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm happy that it's Friday, and actually excited to. Even though I'm not a big like F1 guy or anything like that, excited for this weekend to check that out. I'm gonna be out there Sunday to check out the race.
Oh, you got a media credential.
Not credential. I was thinking back a while. I was thinking I might cover it, but Perk is covering it for us, and I actually just got invited to a thing, so I'll be checking it out. And
Okay, so you got invited. Okay.
yeah.
To me, I would go for the event of it.
Yes,
You,
I love that. Yeah.
the race does nothing for the sport itself. I find it boring as hell. It's the same guy practically winning all the time every year. It's been like that forever. It's who has the best car and all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of that part to me is just but the way they do it here is really nice.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I can understand people wanting to go to the event itself. One of the things
Miami does it right. Miami, because I mean that campus is top of the line. But I agree with you as far as just the race aspect. And I mean, maybe if I knew more about it, I'd get more into it. But it's kind of like once I see the car zoom by one time, I've seen them all. It's like I see it. All right, I saw it. But it did change last time. Lando Norris.
more. For me, NASCAR has more storylines, more rivalries. The guys will get into fights. I love NASCAR. I just think just NASCAR for me, and there's bumping and all of that. So I just think there brings more to it.
Maybe we got to watch that series. I know there's that. Was it a Netflix series a few years back? I know
one. Yeah.
Which I missed it and I haven't checked it yet. But I mean, I remember like back on year one, I went with a friend who had just watched it and was getting into it because of that. So maybe I got to watch that. And although I guess the storylines would be a little outdated by now.
Yeah. But it does give you a good feel for the sport itself. So yes, it is worth watching. It does educate you. Okay.
Yeah.
So I watched a couple of episodes. It's just I'm more of it's kind of like golf. I don't really want to watch it on television. I really have almost no interest. Maybe on a Sunday, like right at the end, the last hour or two, if there's something exciting, yeah, maybe I might watch that. But I'm not the guy that's going to sit there all day on my ass and watch golf for 6 hours. And no, there's no way, bro, that'll put me to sleep. But if I go live and you give me a cigar and I get to walk the fairway like I used to do at Doral, okay, I can do that. I'm good with that. That's fun.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, that's kind of the way it is. I'd like to be there and enjoy the atmosphere and all that, the event, but the race itself.
Yeah. I'm the same way with golf. I'll tune in for Masters Sunday back nine. Like once it's like, all right, this is what it's coming down to, and maybe I need like to see a leaderboard where there's something happening to know to tune in. If someone's running away with it, I might not, but that's kind of I'm the same way with golf. I really need it to be like coming down to the wire, and I actually enjoyed it when I watched this past Masters that Sunday that race. With Rory McIlroy, like would he choke? Would he step up? And that was interesting.
All right, so right before you came on, and it's interesting because I'm glad they asked it because it brings up a really interesting subject. And as my mind was working, I came up with a really interesting dynamic that has developed here in South Florida lately. There are two teams that know when not to get off. They don't know how to get off the gravy train, and there's only one team that does. So we've watched over the last couple of years, the Miami Heat and Pat Riley have made the mistake over and over and over again. They had the upstarts have a half decent season, and they said, "Oh no, let's sign Whiteside and Dion Waiters and all these other clowns for 4 years." Stupid. Just milk what you have and move on and stay flexible. And they didn't, and they tied themselves down for 4 years. When Jimmy Butler was obviously balling for them and getting to that second championship, I said, now's the time you got to get off the bandwagon. Get the Hall of Picks so you can restock the team and start doing it over. But they didn't, and they ruined the window, and they're done. And they were dumb about it, unfortunately. I could come up with a couple of other scenarios for the Heat, but we'll move over to your beat, the Dolphins. So X, he has the 10 interceptions. Obviously, I'm the dick. And I said, now's the time. X has had a ton of injuries. He's had a ton of problems off the field. He just had the greatest year of his life. You're never going to get this again. Trade him now at his height, and you can get something. Dolphins failed. They paid the price. Tyreek, yeah, it's back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons. You got to understand that shit's going to end. You got value right now. You're at a peak. He wants more money. Don't guarantee it. Just let it play out. He's not going to have a third 1,700-yard season. And look what's happened. Now you're stuck with a guy that has baggage on top of inconsistencies on the field. You got to know when to get off the gravy train. The Panthers, the owners take over. They see that Dale Talon isn't the guy. And by the way, way before any of the beat guys, get to shoot my horn a lot on this fucking show. But way before the beat guys, I said, you got to fire Dale Talon. He's not getting the job done. And that was blasphemous. I had George Richards. I had David Dork on. I would tell them that, and they wouldn't even touch the subject because they're on the beat. But they made the decision that, dude, the best has come from him. Yeah, he got us Barkov and Ekblad and Huberdeau and all these guys. We need to part ways. And they did. And then the other one was, I said, you got to get rid of Huberdeau. Why? They're never going to win with Barkov and Huberdeau because they're two what was it I called them? Goobers. They're really like guys that are leaders in that sense. They're kind of great players in their own way, and they'll do their job, but they're not going to lead. You need a dog. You need this guy for Kachuk. Well, I didn't say Kachuk. I said you got to go get a stop for him. And they did. The guy Kachuk. They did the hard move. We got to get rid of one of our top players. Okay, they understood what grade to train and when to get off of it. I wonder who's having success and who isn't. It's interesting that the teams that know when to get off a gravy train, when to make the tough decisions, is the only one that is winning. And the teams that don't know how to make the tough decisions, like the Dolphins and the Heat, they're screwing things up. They're actually setting their teams back in the process.
Yeah. Now with the Heat, let's also remember they have brought 3 championships to Miami, and it's not like it was that
matters, bro. None of that matters. We got to talk about what's going on.
Got to the finals 2020, 2023.
We got to talk about what, bro. Giannis was injured, Embiid was injured, and then the bubble year. We got to stop with that. Those are fluke things.
Oh, don't make it about the bubble year.
Fluke shit.
That team handled adversity better than the other teams.
Exactly.
That's a championship DNA quality.
Both seasons were flukish. Were never real. You were never really that good. You just had a shortened season.
You had to beat the Celtics too.
Yeah. Which they weren't ready. They were kind of green still at that point. They're not what they are now, that they handle you and they just get rid of you. Everything was a perfect storm for the Miami Heat. We just lie to ourselves and we think that it's more than what it is. Brother, I've lived this. This is the 80s Dolphins. We weren't that good in 82. And then when we get to the championship, Washington just runs all over our asses. And then in 85 with Marino, you had a hot hand. He threw 5,000 yards, all that shit. And then when you get to San Francisco, guess what? They handle your ass on offense and defense because you really weren't that good. Sometimes, the Panthers are really that good. The Big Three were really that good. The 70s Dolphins were really that good. The 80s and very early 90s Canes were really that good. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we lie to ourselves about some of the accomplishments. Sometimes it's flukish and you get there. And yes, it's great that they got there, but they still don't make the right decisions. It's more of Spo bailing out the front office more than anything else the last 10 years. The last 10 years, he's been bailing out the front office. Okay. Since the big three, the front office of the Miami Heat is mediocre, bro. Mediocre.
Yeah, because those rosters weren't supposed to go all that far. Yeah, that was masterful coaching from Spo.
That's my point.
Yeah, and to win a series.
That's my exact point there. They're not that good in the front office right now, and they failed to make the right decisions. They used to be dogs in the front office. They used to make tough decisions. They used to, but now in the last 10 years, they've kind of lost their fastball. The Miami Dolphins have never had a fastball since the 70s. So right now, they have failed to make really tough decisions. And by the way, were you for paying Tyreek?
No. I mean, I remember last offseason, we talked about it all spring and summer was don't do that. Maintain your flexibility. And then it went the way it did.
Horrible move on their part. You know what I mean? The X1, I can understand. You were probably one of those guys, right? That, you don't mind. You would have never thought of trading X after the 10 interceptions. That was a crazy idea from my part, which I was right completely, because once you get to a point where a person's at an age and, a peak, you got to understand where that peak is. And if you're the front office, whether it's Chris Greer or whether it's Pat Riley, you got to know when that moment is, and you got to be able to get off that moment, dude.
Yeah. I wouldn't have done that with X just because it felt that was he presented the Dolphins' greatest strength for those seasons. And then I'm not a fan of just turning strengths into weaknesses, which is what you would have done with your corners at that point. And then you would have been holding on to Byron Jones, who really did not work out in Miami. To keep Byron Jones instead of X, that would have been tough.
X turned into weakness. That's what happened. From that point on, he had 7 interceptions in the next 3 years. And he was burned. He wasn't the guy anymore. After that, he was never that guy again. He was never that guy again at all. And he had off-the-field issues too.
Yeah.
So that was his peak right there at that moment. I understand. Look, I totally understand. People get enamored, and 10 interceptions is an amazing feat, but that's where you're going to get value. That's where somebody's going to give you a first and a second or something like that. They're going to do it because they're going to think, we're an X away at that moment. And that's why I would have traded Butler after the championship run, because somebody would have said, we're a Butler away, and you would have gotten 4 first-rounders at that moment, maybe 5. And the Miami Heat would have been able to help. That would have helped them to rebuild where they're at now. And they don't have anything to rebuild. And for the Dolphins, their secondary is still a problem. At least if you trade X at that moment, maybe that helps you shore up the secondary with draft picks, more than just Cam, because Cam hasn't worked out, unfortunately. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting that the Panthers are the one team that makes the really difficult decisions that the Heat and the Dolphins refuse to make.
Yeah, I remember that Huberdeau trade, and I'm not the biggest hockey aficionado to know it all, but I remember just thinking what I know Huberdeau from being here, and I'm like, they really traded Huberdeau? And I was kind of like along the lines of everyone else and what they were thinking. But then, yeah, it's you got to know what you're getting to. And then once I found out who Kachuk was, then I'm like, okay, like who he really, I've heard the name and stuff. But then once I saw him down here, then I'm like, oh, okay, I see what they were seeing, and how it changed their playoff type of culture that they bring, and how they have more toughness for those more physical postseason series, and it has worked wonders since. So, but yeah, Foresight is huge for franchises. That's why these guys that run the organizations should be paid the big bucks to have that difference in vision from the fans, who the fans like like the way I just described myself with the Panthers and the Huberto trade. I was like, no, you cannot do that. but it's those guys in the front office that have to be able to differentiate, know the whole league, and know how that guy can fit into what you're doing and what he can add, and the value that you're getting for the one you're shipping out. Mix all those things into the equation and figure out the best move for the organization, and have the goal to do it if it's not a popular choice.
And I'm a huge Riley guy, but he has been screwing up a lot lately, and he's got to get his shit together to get them around. And I'm a Greer guy, but those are a couple mistakes that he has made that just, and they're not hindsight, because I talked about them all here on the show, and I said you have to make these moves now, and they failed to do it. And those are things that have set them back, unfortunately, man. It has
and
sucked.
With Riley, I think it's been more missing on the big whales ever since. I mean, aside from Jimmy Butler, and he wasn't even considered that big of a whale that free agency. He was like good player, but he was just the number. Was he? He was like the number 2, maybe even number 3, because people were still high on Ben Simmons with the Sixers back then after Embiid. So then you snagged him with the foresight that he could be a number 1 that could take a team on a deep playoff run. For the Heat, it turned into finals runs with some other things happening for them, like you mentioned. But I feel like after those two, it was more like add to what you have, not move off of Jimmy. Like they were trying to land Damian Lillard that offseason when his value was still high, before this unfortunate Achilles, the blood clots, which is just awful for him. But, the way the Bucks tried to pair Giannis and Dame and have that vision, which hasn't worked out in Milwaukee. But, I feel like coming off that finals run, it was about giving Jimmy another weapon than moving off of him, where I feel like you would have just sort of been punting on the next couple of seasons at that point when you just made a finals run. So I was okay with trying to add another superstar to the core of Jimmy and Tyler Hero growing and Bam Adebayo, obviously.
Yeah, and by the way, the other result of all of this is people want to be a part of the Panthers. They'll take less money to be here, which their stars are taking less money to accommodate their other stars, and then other people want to be traded here. Nobody wants to be traded to the Dolphins. Nobody wants to really be in the Dolphins. Nobody really wants to be traded to the Heat. Nobody really, oh my God, I got to be there in the Heat. That's gone, dude. That's gone.
The Panthers are landing rivals. Marshawn?
The Panthers are, but what hurt the Heat, what hurt the Dolphins was if McDaniel has real success over the last couple of years where he gets to the playoff and wins some games, this season would have been a season where guys would have sacrificed and would have stayed here because the momentum was building. Unfortunately, it's gone the other way. It's declining as it is, and so people don't want to be a part of this. The Heat is the same thing. I'm already hearing people talk about, well, Bam is a guy people want to play with. Nobody wants to play with Bam, bro. Okay? Just because he's friends with people on the USA basketball team and all that, they see what we see. Offensively, he ain't a dog. He doesn't bring it. So why is somebody going to come to play with a person that isn't a dog, that isn't going to take the pressure off him on off nights? Because you can't ask the superstar to score 30 points every night. You got to have a Jaylen Brown to a Tatum. You got to have a yin to a yang in the NBA. And sometimes you got to have two yings to a yang. Okay? You don't even have a yin or a yang on this team. Tyler isn't, Bam isn't, but yet we have people already delusional talking about how Bam may want to recruit people or people writing about that. He's not recruiting a goddamn thing. Nobody really wants to play with Bam. He's a nice guy. He's a great guy. You want to be friends with him. But that's the other thing that's happening now. The Heat are no longer an organization that people are dying. These new generational players over the last 10 years and what's happened now since the Big Three, things have changed, dude. You have changed the image of your team over the last 10 years. And the Dolphins, well, they haven't changed their image for 40 years. So that's the other thing. You look at what the Panthers have developed. They've developed a team people want to be a part of. The Heat and the Dolphins, it's interesting. They're not really franchises that players and their agents are clamoring to be a part of or send them there.
Yeah. And the Dolphins had that quick glimpse run where, yes, you were getting prized veterans and free agents that wanted to come here as the team was building. But then now that's what happens when you start to see the decline. Now you have to draft well, which that's what they're hoping they did at the top of this draft. And then probably we'll have to do it some more in the coming years and hope that the past draft class
Hold on a second.
develops as well.
Hold on a second. It's and sorry to make the comparison because some of you get all butt hurt. It's very Kamala Harris.
Why is that?
Yeah, Kamala Harris. She made a great campaign run, right? Because she had every name in the book come up there and perform and all that. Well, we found out she paid all of them. That's why they were all there. All those stars lined up because she paid them. Well, the Dolphins were only sexy because they paid them. I just told you, the Panthers, they're sexy because people are taking less money. So this whole thing about paying, we've done this over 30 years of free agency. We've done this over and over and over again where we've paid, and then there's no end result to it. That's why they come here. It's not because they think you're going to win. It's because you're paying them. It's not like Jalen Ramsey took less. It's not like Tyreek blatantly told everybody he chose Miami over New York because the tax laws over there in New York made him earn less money. So he came here. So it's not really that we're sexy. It's that we pay and there's no state tax. That's all it is. It's not like people were taking less to accommodate for us outside of what? Calais Campbell?
Calais Campbell took less that year. Yeah. It was still a destination Teron Armstead wanted to come to. That 22 offseason as a free agent. And Tyreek, yeah, he was paid handsomely, of course. But Calais Campbell did take less. And so Jalen Ramsey, he did the Dolphins were a team that matched all the criteria for the trade to where he wanted to go.
This offseason is different than the offseason that Calais Campbell came here. When he came here, he wasn't asking for $8 million because nobody was going to give him that. It's just after the season he had, somebody said, oh, bro, we need that leadership, and he's still productive. Let's bring it, because they're paying him also for leadership too, because it's super important, obviously, in the locker room. And obviously the example that man sets. But nobody was giving him big money last year when Miami signed him. If he would have signed, it would have been right around the same everywhere else he would have gone. You know?
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, the Dolphins fit all the criteria of what Jalen Ramsey was looking for when he was getting traded 2 years ago. So Tyreek Hill already had a home in South Florida. So that was, yes, the money played a big role, but that was a big part in him wanting to join the Dolphins. And it had to be a team with an offensive-minded guru coach, just as he was going into his first year, at least having the sight that he was hoping that the offense could do a lot for him. And he had to trust Tua as well. So there were all those factors for Tyreek as well. And Armstead that same offseason.
Frankie Fresco sends in a super chat. He says Jalen Ramsey had a falling out with Doug Marrone in 19. Jalen also said, Fangio, I will never forgive that coach for not utilizing him. And X looks like Jalen is more of a problem than McDaniel. Yeah, but it's the airplane movie. Shane, they bought their tickets. They knew what they were getting into. I say, let them crash. Bro, you know who Jalen Ramsey is. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's by the way, there's another one. Why did you pay him last year? There's no reason to pay him. None whatsoever. Why did you do that? There was no reason to extend McDaniel. Why did you do that? There was no reason to guarantee Tyreek. The things that they do, baffling.
It was the offseason of appeasement was 2024 for the Miami Dolphins. It was I laid it out one time in a tweet. It was, all right, you extend Jalen Waddle. You gave Tua his big quarterback contract extension. You extended McDaniel. Tyreek Hill got the guarantees added to his contract. And then Jalen Ramsey before week one is like, what the fuck? I ain't practicing. You're paying everybody else and not me, and I do what I do. Then you appease him too. Since then, out of all 5 of those, they've all either let you down or have asked out. And in Tyreek Hill's case, both. He was under 1,000 yards last year, so he let you down with his performance, and he even had the post-game locker room tirade asking to get out of the organization, which he has since walked back. But still, that did happen. So,
and the only one that I would have approved is Waddle. That's the only one that you should have done because it was up, and that's now time to do it, and that's fine.
Ahead of it. Yeah, you got ahead of it. Yeah, because it's only going to go up. You wait another year for the 5th-year option, then it's only going to go up. But even he had his first season below 1,000 yards. It was his worst season.
But I have to be honest.
Yeah,
that's the only one I would have done, and it would have been it would have been questionable or whatever. But I'm on the record. I would have never done any of those other ones. I would have said, no, Jalen, no, we're good right now, bro. No, we're not doing that. No, Tyreek, no, sorry. No, we're not. No, oh, Mike, no, you haven't earned it. No, we're not doing that right now.
And Tua is the quarterback market, too. So, yeah. What's your stance on Tua?
Dude, Tua, you have to do. You have no choice. The two issues with Tua is, one, the team doesn't do enough to protect him on the offensive line because you got a coach also that doesn't put value into guards. You don't stick to the run.
Well, they're trying to change that now. They did change that.
Yeah, it's a little late now. But anyway, and then the other one is that Tua's a moron. He wants to go seek contact, and he's got to play like Marino and Brady and Manning and Breeze and all those other guys that are statues. They just found a player and got rid of the ball and didn't take hits. And they didn't go and seek contact. I don't know what makes that kid think that is a smart move. That's a dumbass move on his part. So, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's the competitor in him that comes out, but he's got to restrain that and channel that energy into his focus on his quarterback play, not trying to go be a warrior like those other 11 guys on offense and defense. Just be the quarterback that the Dolphins need you to be.
All right, what do you got going on in the Sentinel here in the off season? What are you working on this weekend besides the F1?
Yeah, no, I mean I got a good weekend off here, so just only if there's news. I'll be on call if the Jalen, I'll get myself prepared for the Jalen Ramsey scenarios if they occur. I think the franchise would be smart to just wait post June 1, but at least coming off draft last weekend, I get this weekend to just relax unless something happens.
Yeah, I'm with you. So follow him on Twitter at David Furones _ so you can get Dolphin news and F1 nuggets. Okay, so
maybe I don't know how many nuggets I'm gonna get. I'm there to have a good time.
All right, just one thing: don't speed around the facility when you go over there to the F1 race. Okay, because we have other people that speed during events. So just make sure. Okay, just because you cover him, it might rub off. So I want to make sure you take it easy when you drive over to the stadium. All right.
Yeah. Well, they have all these parking lots that are like far off too, because the whole parking lot is now part of the racetrack and the campus. So it's like you can't even go there. So I know it creates a little bit more to the commute, but maybe Ubering. Although I know it's hard to get out of there if you Uber. So I don't know. I'll figure out my plan.
You got it. All right, man. Follow him on Twitter at David Furones _ Appreciate you, my brother. Have a great weekend.
Yes, sir. You too.
You got it. Bankruptcy, homeowner property damage, homeowner claim, condo defense, business owner claims, commercial litigation, personal injury. Jeff Welt and Daniel Rheaume can help you out in so many different ways. And the consultation's completely free. 954-966-4646. They've been at this forever. They take on these big corporations. They can help you. They have cases where they have 180 defendants, which is amazing. 954-966-4646. Hour number 2 is next. Manny Navarro kicks it off.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.